forgot to tell you a story from Emerald City Comic Con that I shared here in the studio with Beth, and I am infinitely delighted by this. In a comparatively slow moment at Emerald City Comic Con, a congoer saddles up to the table, and I see him walking towards me because he's got 2 gigantic convention bags in either hand. You know, this kind of thing, like the bags that drag on the floor, they're so big.
Yeah, he's a goer.
Yeah, and he's kind of doing a waddle up to the booth, with the 2 big bags, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, Dave Kellett, my wife and I were just talking about you yesterday. What are the odds that I would see you here?" And I said, "Oh, hi." He goes, "Yeah, we were just talking about you." We said, "Boy, that Dave Kellett, he's had a heck of a go of it. You really combined some amazing writing with some so-so art to make a career out of it." And I was so taken aback. I was like, "What?" I didn't. I was like, "Oh, thanks, thanks." And I'm just amazed at the level of social inability to spot an insult wrapped in all the essence of a compliment, but like is absolutely an insult. Boy, Dave Kellett, we were just talking about how you've made a career of it, combining great writing and so-so art to really make a go of it. And I was like, "Whoa, whoa."
Yeah, that's actually 2 insults, really, because the so-so art is an insult, but then it's not like to become successful, to become someone who's doing this for a living. No, it's making a go of it. Making a go of it is a long ways away from success.
Yeah, it's akin to be like, "Brad, look at that 3-legged dog. It can still run. Look at that thing go." Oh, boy.
He's not running, but he certainly is making a go of it.
God, though.
There's 2 things. There's going and there's making a go. And you, my friend, are making a go as far as this guy's concerned.
God. You know, you and I are pretty gregarious and outgoing conversationalists when we need to be. But there is kind of an unspoken thing among all cartoonists that have ever exhibited at a Comic-Con that you get some folks that just by nature of their life, they don't do a lot of talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they don't.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that they're in any way bad people. It's just some people are either shy or tend to be homebodies, but Comic-Con brings them out because they've been reading all year, and by God, they're going to come out for Comic-Con. Yeah. And unfortunately, sometimes you get those people where they're like, they're so excited to see you, or they don't do a lot of talking. So the compliment comes out like, "Brad Geiger, you're super ugly," and you're like, "Wait, what? What? Why is that? Why would you say that to me?"
Or you get the feeling that he was trying to be nice, but he just didn't have a lot of experience doing that. So it's like, "Oh yeah, Brad, you're actually not a half bad looking guy once you get past the nose."
You know what, Brad? Everybody says you have a scent, but I don't pick it up. I mean, there's a little something, but. So also the whole thing was couched in amazingness. Like, "Dave Kellett, my wife and I were talking about you last night." All right, so you're thinking like, "Oh, well, no one would say that unless you're about to breach into a compliment." Right. And then like, "Yeah, you really made a go of it. You've got the great writing combined with so-so art." Like the fact that someone would vocalize that to your face, you're like, "What?" And with a big smile, holding his 2 gigantic Comic-Con bags.
Well,
I was like, "What?"
I mean, you couldn't have written the strip better if you would have formulated that, because number one, everything is misdirection and set up false expectations. He's got these big bags, right? So it's like, "Oh, this guy's walking away with original art. This guy did not come to look. He came to buy." And then he holds everything back perfectly until the punchline, which is so-so art. Leaves that for the very last. If you would have crafted that over the course of several writing sessions, you couldn't have done it better than that.
So you're saying he expertly trolled me. He held on to it.
Absolutely. Comedy writing might come naturally to him if he ever tried it. It might just be something he's very natural at doing.
You know what's funny? I just realized that in the context, so he said, "My wife and I were talking about you last night." So this guy clearly is no good with compliments. Imagine being this guy's wife. You know what, Jenny? You've done all right with your looks. Like, imagine that piece of shit being married to you.
Well, not only that, but if he's, usually when you say that my wife and I were talking about something last night, there's an implication that you were getting ready to put the moves on. Like if you're getting ready, if you're talking to your wife at night, for me, it's like, "Oh man, you look great tonight. Gosh, your hair is fantastic. You're starting to get into the groove, and here he is putting the works on the wife, and the only thing he can think of is, Dave Kellett's got so art.
That's his go-to move to initiate. That's amazing. I tell you what, that duck had a great punchline. Boy, that guy can't draw for shit, though. He couldn't draw his way out of a paper bag. Boy, he's made a career of it, though. What a cartoonist. He's really made a career
Now brace yourself.
Oh, jeez. Oh, well, I'm not going to do better than that joke, so I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making so-so comics.
And making a living from so-so comics. I'm Brad Guigar, editor of webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc.
And I'm his so talented friend, Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week, we're making a go of it at ComicLab, and that's made possible by your support at patreon.com/ComicLab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. So how are you? I haven't talked to you in this is odd. I haven't talked to you in like 5 or so days. So how are you?
We've been kind of out of touch. Well, no, today has not been a good day.
Okay.
Today's been a bad day. So I'm burying the lead a little bit. I've decided to bring an assistant on, and I think this will be like her second week. She's coming in twice a week, and she picked up Photoshop amazingly, which wasn't in her wheelhouse, but she's doing such a good job. And
great.
And so one of the things that I'm trying to do to make sure that she's comfortable here and so forth, she likes Minute Maid lemonade. So usually I've got black cherry seltzer water here for myself. And I usually bring in a case every 2 weeks to keep in the little miniature fridge that I've got here. So I told my wife when she went shopping, I said, "I'll pick up a case of Minute Maid lemonade. I'll stock the fridge and make sure Kathleen's all set." And so I'm coming in to work today, coming into the studio, and I've got to make 2 trips because I got my briefcase and I brought my food in and everything. I'm on my second trip out, and I've got 2 cases of sodas, those long cardboard boxes. And
right.
So I take one out, put it down on the ground.
Oh, I know where this is going. No. No.
I take the other one out, counterbalance it, right? I go to shut the door.
No.
I lean over to pick up the case of sodas, and I feel that little pop in the small of my back, and the pain just radiates out. It's like, oh shit! And right now I'm at a 45-degree angle out in the parking lot in a neighborhood with people. I'm sure there's people going about their lives out there who see now this man in a black pea coat. Bent over at a 45-degree angle. If you remember Artie Johnson's character, the old man in Laugh-In that used to do those interstitials, looking very much like Artie Johnson's old man. And now I've got to make it back into the studio. My back's at a 45-degree angle. If I try to straighten it up any more than that, it's searing pain. I can't sit down and cry because that's socially unacceptable.
Oh,
and it's showing weakness, which you don't want to do in Philadelphia, and
because that's how you end up shivved in Philadelphia.
Yeah, you don't want to show weakness. So I'm taking these baby steps with my back at a 45-degree angle, holding 2 cases of soda. I look like I'm holding a funeral for soda. I'm walking very small. My head is hanging low. All you need is like
also
a New
just
Orleans.
Just questioning all of the life choices that got you to this moment in a parking lot. Oh no!
Everything so I finally make it in, and I immediately pop a couple of Advil. I'm sitting down right now, Dave. I am not too proud to tell you that I have from the fridge a can of black cherry seltzer water stuffed into the back underwear because the elastic is holding it in place. And because I don't have ice packs over here in the studio, so I've got a can of soda down my pants, and sitting in an empty studio with a blanket over my head, talking to you. If I said that I couldn't get much lower, I don't know how much lower it could get.
Oh,
Here
wow.
I am with a can of soda, talking in a podcast to a guy who writes pretty good, but his art's kind of so. So I too am making a go of it, but the thing I'm making a go of is sitting up straight.
Oh, Brad, I feel you so badly right now because this has been my like, kind of curse the last like 4 years is once you throw your back out and you got a few extra pounds on you, you keep throwing it back out again, and I keep throwing my back out. So like I've actually charted it where like twice a year I throw my back out. And now I know the
you
immediate
would be doing this in a chart. Only you would be building the I hurt my back chart. Is it a spreadsheet too?
It's not an I hurt my back chart, you jerk. It's a weight loss chart. I'm trying to drop some pounds, and every once in a while,
okay,
if I have a bad week, I like chart like, oh, you know what? I went to that birthday party and Papa had some cake, or oh, I threw my back out, or oh, this or that, that kind of thing.
Okay, that I get.
So I just I write down conditions that contributed to bad weeks. Anyway, what I'm getting at though is I can feel you because anytime I throw my back out, it's like I know I'm in for a week. I'm just like, well, this is my new life now. I live here among the floor people, just lying on the floor. Let's see if I can get any work done on my laptop from the floor.
Oh, and you've got to ask for help from your kids.
Oh God. Well, Brad,
what?
like our refrigerator gets kind of a vapor lock at the door, So if you open it and then close it and then try to open it again, you get a weird vapor lock. And so it takes like 15 pounds of pressure to open up that door. And I can't do it when I've thrown my back out, and so sometimes, like I've got a burger and I just want some ketchup. It's like I gotta ask my wife or the kids. Daddy wants a ketchup. Can someone just crying? Can someone please open the refrigerator door for me?
All I'm asking for is ketchup.
I just want. This is what my life has become: crying on the floor for ketchup.
In the fetal position.
Please, I have a so-so art career. Please, just open the door.
Ketchup could make it a little bit better. Oh man, and not only that, but I'm leaving in exactly 1 week because fittingly enough, my 50th birthday is coming up. And I told my wife, I know I can't avoid turning 50, but I don't want to be here when it happens. So so her birthday gift to me was arranging a little 3-night stay in a nice warm place with a beach, and I'm looking forward to it so much. But I'm really, really hoping that my back is better by the time I get on that plane.
I like that you were literally running away from time. Like I know it's got to come, but I don't want to be here when it happens.
That's what I said. I just don't want to be. I want to be someplace else when this happens. I don't want to.
Can I tell you, Brad? When death walks in with his scythe, your bad back is not going to help you run away from that. That's You're going to be like, hold on, just give me a 1 minute running start to the door. Hold on. Ow, okay, pass me that ketchup. Oh, God. Oh, this is not going well.
As long as you're here, see, you put that scythe to good use. Just pry it in there and break that vapor lock for me. If I'm going with ketchup.
Can you pop that door open? I got a Coors Light just inside the door. I want to go with that in my hand.
I want to go out with a beer in my hand. Oh, man.
Oh, God. I'm so sorry that's happening, Brad. Oh, that's miserable. When you throw your back out. Also, every little task is so humiliating when you have your back thrown out. Like trying to get out of bed in the morning is like it's like a 5-minute think piece. You're like, all right, so if I swing, you're like trying to figure out how to cantilever your legs. It's just a shit show. It's not good.
And it's like you immediately and listen, as lazy as we are as cartoonists, you become 10 times lazier because you are trying to find the most effort-free route to any situation. It's like, if you've got a soda, you don't need ice in that soda. You can just drink the soda without ice today. That's fine. I can find a shortcut to everything in my life for the next 3 days until I can walk at a greater than 45-degree angle.
Shortcut, can't get the fridge open? Just starve. That's easier. You don't need to. Listen, that back hurts so much. That might be a better way to go out. Just let yourself wither and die. That's fine.
The good news is I'll look good in the coffin. I will have dropped a few pounds.
He was so thin. How did he throw his back out?
Yeah.
I don't know how he did it.
And what's that in the back of oh, he's got a soda stuffed into his pants.
Oh, and look, there's a ketchup. He's got a soda stuffed into his pants.
just like in real life, except this time it's in the back.
Oh, it's like high school insecurities all over again.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. So the weirdest thing about all this, Brad, is that you were brought low by lemonade.
By lemonade.
It's not like you were digging a ditch. You weren't like wrestling at somebody from, WWF. You were brought low by lemonade, Brad. This is such a humbling moment.
Right now, Jimmy Carter, in his 90s, is hoisting a cinder block, making a new house for some deserving, underprivileged family, swinging a hammer, probably biting the nails in half if they're too long, and I can't carry lemonade. Like if Jimmy Carter, right now, Dave, put your mind around this. Right now, if 90-something-year-old Jimmy Carter works up a sweat, slinging cinder blocks and says, boy, I wish I'd have a lemonade, I would be absolutely powerless to do anything about it.
Mr. President, thank you for building that house for those people. I can't pass you this lemonade. I am so sorry. I'm Brad Geiger. Peak of fitness over here. I can't pass you this lemonade because also imagine the image of you as a boss now. I got you this lemonade, but I can't pick it up and pass it to you.
Excuse me. I've got this lemonade for you. You're going to have to open it yourself.
I'm so sorry. It turns out my back is made out of Jell-O and old bird twigs, and I can't lift anything past 4 ounces. I'm so sorry. Anyway, welcome to the studio. I'm a real man.
Oh, God, you're right. I haven't thought that far ahead. This was a horrible, horrible idea. I'm going to have to fire her tomorrow. You realize that?
It's the only way out.
I can't let this happen. She's gone. It was a good idea. Next.
Oh my God, that's
I'm gonna have to bring in a fresh. Assistant that doesn't know what a jelly spine I am.
Doesn't know that your back is made out of a bird's wing. Oh God, that's funny. All right, well let's jump into our first question about actual comic stuff, Brad. What do you think? Now that we're 17 minutes in, what do you think?
Has it been 17? Oh, God. It feels like
unless
18.
we end up editing out 5 minutes of back and ketchup stories, I'm not sure.
No, leave the ketchup in. Leave the ketchup in. Oh,
Dear Brad and Dave, I come for the comics, but I stay for the ketchup-related anecdotes.
Now that Garrison Keillor retired, I don't have enough ketchup jokes in my life.
Dear Brad, can you go on another tangent about your back and trying to get a basic thing of mayonnaise out of the fridge? All right, here we go. All right, here's the question for you. Dave and Brad, I wrote myself into a corner 3 months ago, and I've only just figured out an entertaining, hopefully, way out. Without avoiding risk-taking altogether, do you have any ideas for jump-starting creative problem-solving? Side note, I'm 56 years old. At 1 3-panel strip every 3 months, I'm going to be dead before I've even half finished a book. All right, Brad, so the question is, how do you jumpstart creativity when you've written yourself into a corner, which is something we've advocated for in the past? Bradley J. Geiger of Backbrace, Indiana, that small town, Backbrace, Indiana. What do you recommend for jumpstarting creativity when you've written yourself into a corner?
I've got good news for you. If you're doing a storyline using a 3-panel strip and it's only publishing every 3 months, the good news is you don't have to worry about your writing because nobody's reading this thing. There's no way anybody's sticking with that. And number one, we've talked about a strip is not a great way to do a storyline. Oh man, I'm telling you, this is not going to be a good show, Dave. I'm in a really grumpy mood.
Oh God,
my filter is gone.
It's good to know that searing pain and the combination of painkillers and searing pain is going to combine to create a really pleasant Brad Geiger. Brad, I've got a vase. Here's my question. I've got a vase of flowers, and they're so beautiful. Where should I put them in the room to lighten up the whole room? All right, question asker. Here's your goddamn answer. Throw those flowers into a fire. Throw them into a fire. I don't care. He said, you could walk off a cliff. Next question. Dear Brad Geiger, I like puppies. I like petting their soft coat. Do you advocate I start from the head and pet to the tail, or tickle their tummy first? I tell you what you could do. You could throw that puppy off a bridge. I don't care. I'm Brad Geiger. My back hurts. Man.
Oh, it hurts to laugh. You son of a bitch.
I'm causing you pain with joy. Oh, that's amazing.
Well, listen, so here's the deal. Let's talk about the bigger issue aside from that. Here's the deal. I don't leap. I jostle for joy. I groan with joy when I hear that you've written yourself into a corner, because in my opinion, that's one of the best ways to really improve your writing skills is to willfully, gleefully write yourself into an inescapable corner and then force yourself to write your way out of it.
Agreed.
So when I hear that you're doing that, I think that that's great, and I'm thrilled that you allowed yourself the painful luxury of writing yourself into the corner. Now, any ways for jumpstarting problem solving and getting out? I'll tell you something that has worked for me consistently, and that is this. When you're in a situation and you're like, oh gosh, I can't do the protagonist can't do this, they can't do that, this can't happen, I can't have them wake up and it was just a dream, I can't do this, I can't do that. What works for me time and time again is come at that problem from a different angle. In other words, okay, so we pretty much know the protagonist can't do anything about it. What about this other character? What could they do about it? What about this other situation? Could another situation change the overall dichotomy? Could it change the setting that I've set up? In other words, once you feel you're spinning your wheels on one character, it's time to leave that character alone and shift the scene to another character and start working on that problem. And then just keep shifting until you find the good news is there's a solution to every problem. You will find the solution. There's a solution to every problem. The thing you've got to do is allow yourself to kind of Kobayashi Maru that sucker and change the rules of the game.
Ding,
and
ding,
say,
nerd reference.
Yeah, you got to change the rules. If you've written yourself into a corner, change the rules. Bring that other character in. You know, you're the boss. You're the writer. The only thing I want from you out as a reader isn't logic, isn't probability, isn't a straight line that connects two dots. I want to be entertained. And if you solve that in an entertaining way, I'm going to be willing to forgive all sorts of things if I'm entertained. What do you think about that, Dave?
No, I think entertainment value is good. Kobayashi Maru, actually, it's worth mentioning for those that don't remember. This was a test that, oh man, I'm about to nerd out for a second. This was a test that Starfleet would administer to potential officer candidates, right, Brad?
Yes.
And the idea was that it was an inescapable problem. It was an inescapable battle situation that basically tested how you would react in an unwinnable situation. It was basically a moral and character test, right? And the one person to ever beat it was Captain James T. Kirk, because he basically, I think he reprogrammed the computer. Isn't that what he did?
Yeah.
He cheated. He cheated his way out of it because he hated the idea of losing, which told Starfleet all they needed to know about Captain Kirk.
But, immediate promotion.
Yeah, the idea, though, is that you have a problem, and to Brad's point, you take a completely orthogonal and almost semi-magical solution to it. You brainstorm and you come up with something that's unexpected. But as long as you keep it entertaining, that's how you write your way out of a box. I think that's a strong answer.
Yeah.
And I think another way to look at this is to maintain all the creativity possibilities that Brad and I have advocated for in the past. That is, you keep up your reading. You're also consuming other entertainment so that your brain has more material to work with. You get out every once in a while. You listen to public voices in movie theaters, in coffee shops, and restaurants, on public metros, because you want to hear other voices chiming in your head. And then also you take a break from writing. So you do intense amounts of writing and then maybe go for a walk. Honestly, physical exertion is a wonderful thing to help creativity. Basically, you just want to take get your brain into a different physical or mental place so that you can come up with, as Brad said, that working your way out of a box idea that helps you write your way out of that situation.
Yeah.
But in general, I think you're on the right path in writing yourself into a corner because it forces you to not take a tried and true path, which is frankly a bigger death knell for a story, which is like, oh, here is your problem. Here's the solution. Well, that was easy. On to the next problem. Oh, here's another easy solution.
Oh, no, here's a locked door. I'm standing here in front of a locked door. Whatever am I going to do? Well, I guess I could use this key I've got in my pocket. Shoo, crisis averted.
Well, that sure was handy. Anyway, page 2. Here we go. All right.
Yeah, nobody wants to see a protagonist unlock a locked door. That's just not interesting. Getting through that locked door 100 different ways that don't involve a key, I'm there for it.
Right. Or how about this? So Brad's life has written him into a corner, and I'm not joking right now.
Yeah.
He's thrown out his back. Now, he goes to get into his car, but he drops his keys. So we're talking about a locked door. No big deal. No big hurdle there. But now Brad's life has written him into a corner. So the funny part, the entertaining part, the part we all wish we could be in the parking lot to watch is Brad trying to get his keys off the ground with a thrown out back and getting into his car. And frankly, even getting into his car with a thrown out back is delightful to watch an adult try to do. So what I'm saying is the entertainment comes from being written into a corner and the, oh shit, how are we going to get out of this moment? So don't shy away from those writing moments just because it's going to be tricky to find the answer. It is worth finding the answer in a new and innovative way because that is the nature of entertainment, is how do we get out of this impossible situation?
Let's face it, if I'm in that situation, I've got to try to figure out which mutant power is going to come to me most quickly and is going to be most easy to develop. Telekinesis or talking to animals. Because I've got about 2 choices. I can make that key jump into my hand, or I can ask a nearby squirrel to come over and hand it to me. And I've got to figure out which mutant power I'm most likely to develop in the shortest amount of time.
To suddenly develop. Because let's be honest here. At 50 years old, Brad's body is put together by spit and baling wire now. There's no way it's going to heal itself.
No, I don't have mutant healing factor. That's too late for that.
The only way that this is going to work out is that if Brad, for the first time in human history, develops a mutant power, not that his back actually restitches itself together again. The only solution, frankly, is for him to develop telekinesis. That's our. So we've got to write ourselves out of that corner by using telekinesis because Brad's back is made out of cardboard. That's why we've got to do this.
And single ply at that.
Oh God, I don't know. Do we answer that question sufficiently, Brad?
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about is because unlike Brad's negative Nancy tone, I want to applaud you that at 56. I have no idea as to the broader conditions of your life. I don't know how busy you are. I don't know the things that keep you from cartooning or that might limit your cartooning. But I want to say, in a positive, uplifting note, that I am proud of you that you do what you can. Like you're at least making one comic strip every 3 months. And how lovely is that? That you are taking the time when you can to create and you're continuing on with this story and continuing on with your craft. To Brad's point, I would encourage you to try to up that a little bit more, but maybe you were just being tongue-in-cheek. But regardless.
The only point I wanted to make was that a 3 panels, he could do the same thing. He could put the same sort of time in, but a 3 panel strip is not a great way to read a storyline. And if he's putting all this work into the writing, maybe consider that a full page. And since you're not really locked into a update schedule, instead of trying to do this in 3 panels, you might find that the writing comes a little bit more naturally. And I know this from personal experience. When you open it up from trying to hit something significant in 3 panels to saying, okay, I've got a whole page I can work this out in now. I actually what Dave said about being 56 and throwing solid punches out there in your creative endeavor is absolutely right, and I agree because we can only hope that your back is made of sterner stuff than mine. But I would encourage you in all genuine seriousness. 3 panels does not sound like the greatest way. If you're doing solid jokes in 3 panels, more power to you. And if a storyline develops through that, great. If you're doing a storyline and it sounds like that's what you're doing since you've written yourself into a corner, a 3-panel strip is not the best way to do that. And you might find that the answer to all of your problems is rethinking your format.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. That the idea that he's trying to write a storyline into a very compressed space
Yeah.
from the comic strips that he grew up reading.
Yep.
And it's funny how we've come back to this topic a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. But yeah, it really is speaking to the fact that comic strips were a love child of the newspaper format. They didn't need comics don't need to be written that way. And so if you're
Right.
trying to write a story format, you certainly can. But Brad and I would advocate that now you don't need to do it that way anymore.
Yeah, take those shackles off.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't
yeah,
need it.
yeah.
You're not locked into that anymore. And you're doing the absolutely right thing by saying, okay, I'm only going to update this every 3 months when I'm able to. That's great because, like we've said before, you're not locked into that daily or that weekly update schedule. You can do this if the work is good. You can do it whenever you're able to. And even
Right.
if it's not, that's how you get good is by keeping on and keep doing it. But yeah, rethink that 3-panel. I'm telling you, as a friend, rethink it.
Yeah. But and also, okay, now I don't know if we need to necessarily make this a whole nother topic, but I want to speak to this idea of like I'll have one book done by the time I'm dead.
Mhm.
Uh, because I actually think that for a lot of people out there that are either raising their kids or their grandkids or are have a full-time job that just keeps them super busy, or maybe there's health considerations that keep them from cartooning at a pace that they would like. I just want to tell you that it's okay if you produce one book before you're dead.
Yeah,
How wonderful and blessed is that life that you were able to produce a book of comics over decades and you did it. Um, too much of our modern life is like if you're not producing 7 books a year and you
right,
don't have 1 million followers on Instagram, then you're worthless. You got nothing,
right.
Whereas, Leaves of Grass, Walt Whitman worked on that for his entire adult life and got
Yeah,
revised like 4 times. And then Emily Dickinson, she didn't publish basically in large format until she was dead. Bill Watterson, we might never see those paintings until he's long gone. But there are artists that work quietly in their adult years, in their almost retirement years, and then produce a body of work at the end of it, and that's okay. That's okay too as a life path. How wonderful in the great arc of human history that you have the ability to produce a book. I mean, think about how many people that weren't able to do that. So,
well, and not only that, I'll take that one step further. I don't care if there's never a book. All I care is that you enjoy what you're doing. And if you never do a book to put out into the capitalist mill so that money can be made from it and merchandise can be had, I don't care so much as I care that you did something that fed your soul. You did something that brought a little happiness to you. And if there's never a book out of this, I'm okay with that
yeah.
because your happiness, that self-satisfaction that you yourself got from the sense of accomplishment, that's way more important than the act of putting something up on a print-on-demand printer and seeing if anybody buys it and all that other stuff. None of that is important. Your self-satisfaction, the fact that you set yourself a challenge and that you met that challenge and you're happy and all the things that happened as a result of that, way more important than a book is ever going to be.
And you know what's nice? I think Brad's painkillers just kicked in because what a sweet response.
Yeah, that second Advil just hit my bloodstream.
You're like, and I just want you love and peace and flowers. And you could just hear Brad spacing out as the painkillers kick in.
Yeah, you
And
know what? I am in a much better mood now. I think you're probably right. I think we should go to the second question now while I'm still in a good mood. Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute and stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we'll tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
Because when you do, you'll get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you get to support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And if you can't swing a pledge this month, no worries.
You can still support the show you love by rating us wherever you get podcasts.
Leave us a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with social media mentions, is incredibly helpful.
And now, David, let's talk comics.
All right, Bradley J. Our next question comes in from Jonathan Small. Jonathan says, Brad and Dave, should I have a monthly exclusive podcast episode at a lower Patreon cost tier just because my listenership is low? Is $8 too much for that level? Brad Geiger. So I think a little context around this. It sounds like it is a cartoonist that has a podcast episode that they give out, and they give it out at the $8 level for their tier. But there's probably not a lot of people at that tier. And so they're asking, should they lower that podcast to a lower Patreon tier because the listenership is low? Brad Geiger, what do you think?
So here's what I'm going to tell you. It doesn't matter what Dave and I think. Dave and I can give you one answer or another answer. We can tell you that that we think a number is high or we think it's low. And we can certainly give you some advice in general. But what we say really doesn't matter. What matters is your listeners have already told you what they think, and their say is final.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Okay.
In other words, the listeners have already said $8, not for me. And whether that means that they don't think that the quality is good enough, that's one possibility. If they don't think that there's enough frequency, that's another possibility. It could be that the number is too high. I would say this: there is a disconnect between probably a disconnect between the number of the cost and what they're getting. They have decided that for whatever reason, either the quality isn't worth $8 or $8 isn't worth the perceived quality. Now, I ask myself this. I need to prove this to myself.
Okay.
Right. And the first part, I'll die on that hill. Your listeners have spoken and they say that number's not right for whatever reason.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what Dave and I say, but I want to see this. I want to see this guy's Patreon. I want to check it out. Right.
Okay.
So he sends us a question in through ComicLab, which means that he's got a user account at least on Patreon. So first thing I do, click on his face and I get taken to his user account, and he must have a separate user account than the podcast has, because where I'm expecting to be taken to his podcast Patreon, it's just taken to him as a podcast backer or as a Patreon backer. You understand what I'm saying so far?
Yeah, so far you sound like a really creepy stalker. This is great. Keep going.
Listen, Dave, you buckle up. It just gets worse.
Oh, boy.
So
delightful.
Underneath there, it says, this is what his Twitter is. Aha, says I. I'm going to find out about his podcast and his Patreon by going to his Twitter. That's my next click. Click. I click on that. I go over. There's his face again. And I see in his bio, no link to a Patreon. Nothing at all. But there's a link to something else. It says I forget what the name is, but it's a link to, looks like a blog or something, right? Great. I'm going to click on that, and that's when I'm going to find out about his Patreon. So I click there. No mention of a Patreon on that new page. Nothing. And I do, you do a Command F to see if you can find a word on a web page. I do a search for the word Patreon. Nothing. No word whatsoever about a Patreon. But a little itty bitty header link at the top says podcast. And I realize I'm looking for a podcast. Another clue. Now this has become my white whale. I'm going to find this fucking podcast on Patreon if it kills me. So I click on podcast. I get sent to another page, a sparse interstitial page that said I should go to another site again. So I click on that link. That site looks like a blog. No MP3s. I'm clicking all over the place. I'm finding nothing that I can listen to, and no mention whatsoever of a Patreon. Lots of links to topics you're discussing. So like he's got something, I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is like, he's got all these updates, right? And I'm like, okay, if I click on the headline here, I'm going to get taken to an MP3 I can listen to. Nope. I get taken to something else, and then it says something like, Jonathan and Nick discuss Hitman 2. And the words Hitman 2 are linked. So I know if I click that link, I'll get taken to Hitman 2. I guess that's a video game. But I don't want to see the video game of Hitman 2. I want to hear their podcast. Nothing. I spent, Dave, I spent 14 minutes specifically looking for this guy's Patreon. And by the way, that's 14 minutes and 55 seconds longer than any one of his listeners would have spent. I spent 15 minutes going to site after site after site after site trying to find this guy's Patreon. He's got it more well hidden than any 3 government secrets that I could mention. I couldn't find his Patreon. I have no idea whether this guy is doing anything with his Patreon that's right, wrong, indifferent, because he's refusing. I went to how many sites was that? I've got 5 different sites I've gone to. He refuses to tell me what his Patreon is. It's a secret. I don't know what it is.
Wow, this has been another episode of Brad Teaching Through Sarcasm. Brad has gone 15 minutes through various links to show you that you've got to make your links more easily available.
Holy
Brad Guigar
moly.
on painkillers with his back thrown out, throwing sarcasm like a chimpanzee throws feces. All righty, here we go.
That was not sarcasm. I spent 15 minutes looking for that thing. I want, and listen, I'm talking to you, podcaster. I want that 15 minutes of my life back.
Okay, so now let's offer
sarcasm.
Let's offer some real words. So basically, links everywhere.
You got to link to your podcast, or you got to link to your Patreon. If you want, but listen, I know you think that I went overboard, but here's the deal. There's a reason you're not getting a lot of traction on your Patreon. It's because you're not promoting it.
Yeah, I mean, there is truth to that. Is that it speaks to both imposter syndrome and frankly, all of our shyness about promoting our own work, that a lot of times there will be people either on Instagram or Reddit or on other social media, and I'll be like, wow, I'm really taken by this art style. I would like to read more. Nope, no link backs. Oh, yep. This person, I actually would consider backing them on Patreon. Nope, no mention of a Patreon anywhere. I have to go on to Patreon and like try to type their name, try to type maybe what I think the name of their comics are. And so if you're making it hard, you're doing it wrong. Like, it should be so easy that they see it 7, 8, 9, 10 times before they go, oh, you know what? Yes, I am really getting a value out of this. I do want to read their comics, or yes, I want to back their comics.
Yeah.
And is it hard to do at first? Yes. Does it get easier? Absolutely, yes. Like you kind of, you know how they say one of the reasons why old people get happy is they stop caring what other people think?
Oh, I was just listening to that on the radio just the other day. You're absolutely right. That's a scientific study, is that one of the main things is you just start to care a little bit less about what that guy across the street is thinking about you.
Yeah, so even though Brad is in a parking lot on all fours crying, trying to pick up his keys, the good news is he doesn't care what people think about him because he's just a broken old man.
I don't care what you think. Just leave me alone here with my twisted spine so I can die in peace or develop telekinesis, whichever comes first.
Whatever comes first. No, but so one of the reasons why older people are happy is they spent their whole life worried about what people think, how they look, how people think, how they sound, how people think what they say or what they do or what they've accomplished. And then by the time you get 60, 70, 80, apparently that kind of drifts away. And you're like, fuck it, I've lived a good life. I'm happy. I did the best I could. And I don't care what other people think. So what I'm saying is, does it get easier the more you share your cartoons and your Patreon publicly? And you're like, yes, it absolutely gets easier. Because frankly, you learn that there's only an upside, and you'll just get better at shuffling off the downside of people like, of course you're going to link to your Patreon. Yes, that happens 1 out of every 100 tweets, but you just go, what a sad life that person must lead, and you move on. So to Brad's point, promote your comics, promote the Patreon, make the links easily accessible. And then I think that answers the bigger background problem, Brad.
Yeah.
But do you feel like your earlier answer of your readers have already decided is enough of an answer there?
I really do. Because the rest is academic, right? The readers have decided either $8 is too much to pay for the perceived value of that exclusive podcast, or the podcast isn't worth $8, which is actually 2 separate issues, right?
Right.
In other words, you could make that $8 into $5, and if the perceived value isn't great enough, it's still not going to click. That basically what's got to happen is the perceived value has to be higher than whatever tier you're offering, so that those people think they're getting a bargain. And number one, I'll say that from experience, I'll say that trying to offer exclusive content on Patreon is very difficult because that by nature they can't see what they're getting or they can't hear what they're getting until they got it.
Right.
So you've got to do a good job with teasers. What's got to happen there is one of any number of things. Number one, you could have a sample podcast that they would get at the $8 level that they can listen to for free, kind of priming the pump.
Mm-hmm.
But what's more likely is that what you need to do is really work on building your overall listenership first. And then that listenership is going to be how you funnel. Same way as Dave and I do. We don't let anybody hear the ProTips podcasts, right? But we talk about it on the show all the time. And we promote it on our own social media all the time. The only way that exclusive content works is first we built up a big audience for the ComicLab podcast itself. Then we started working on community, building that Discord server, doing all the things that we do on our Patreon page. Then that's when the exclusive content starts to take root because now we've kind of set that groundwork. And now we can do the exclusive content. Trying to go right to exclusive content with a very low listenership. And I will say, in all seriousness, I think there's a lot, from what I saw, there's a lot about your podcast publishing that you might want to rethink because honest to God, I wanted to hear your podcast and I couldn't. That means there's some stuff that's set up wrong there. And I think if you fix that, then you can build your readership and your listenership. Then you can work on the exclusive podcast. But it all goes back to those basics.
Yeah, and my sarcasm about Brad's sarcasm aside, I think Brad's on the right path there. Is that and the truth is, you don't want to hide your light under a rock. Is another way to say it. Like you've made this beautiful stuff, share it with the world. Part of sharing it with the world is you have to be the carnival barker. Brad and I aren't going to do it for you. There's not some magical reader that's going to do it for you. There's no editor that's going to do it for you. You have to be the carnival barker of your work, and it gets easier with time. Is another way to say it too. So
it absolutely does. And you're worth it. There's the other one. Don't worth it. I'm sure you are. You're right. You're putting this time into this podcast. You want people to hear it. You have worth. So put it out there. Don't give it a second thought. And that's
right. What a nice way to end that. Boy, those painkillers are kicking in at all the right times here.
It's like a roller coaster. I'm up, I'm down, I'm popping these Advil like they're M&Ms. It's I'm almost scared to ask what the next question is.
Dear Brad and Dave, I just need one kind word to help me continue cartooning. Can you give me one kind word?
Stuff it, man.
My lower back is made of 3 tiny small baby birds right now, and they're doing all they can to keep the 90 pounds of my upper torso in place. So you can go shove it. You shove it. I'm Brad Guigar. All right, here we go. This is a fun question for Brad and Dave from our buddy Chris Halbeck. Here's the question. Brad and Dave, if you could transport your writing and drawing skills of today back in time to the 90s when you first submitted work to the syndicates, do you think you would have become a successful newspaper cartoonist? Brad Guigar, I ask this question of you.
Actually, I'm gonna switch up on you. I really want to hear your answer first, because This is an answer. This is a question I've been hoping we'd get to for a little while now, and I want to know what your answer is because I know what my answer is. I want to hear what Dave Kellett is.
I feel like you're setting me up for some kind of slam dunk joke that I'm going to be like, no,
I swear to God, I'm not. But I do think. Well, go ahead. You go first.
Well, as a cartoonist that's universally acknowledged to have so-so art that he is paired with okay writing, I think no. So I look back at the work that I submitted to cartoon syndicates in the 90s. This would have been in the late 90s, and it is to me now embarrassing how bad I would either set up jokes, how bad I would draw scenes, my character designs, the pacing of my writing, the way I would fill panels, the structure of the overall comic strip. Virtually every way that you could judge a comic strip, I embarrassed myself by the way I drew comics 22 to 25 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. I look back at those and I literally cringe. I'm like, oh, God, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, oh God, why did you do it that way? Like 5 more minutes of editing and the joke would have been so much better. 20 more minutes of drawing and the joke was so much better.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, I'm infinitely better as a cartoonist now. Do I think I would have been a success as a syndicated cartoonist? The answer is I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I was ever perfect fit for that newspaper format. Um, and it took me about a decade of painful realization that that was okay. And now I'm very much at peace with the fact that that's okay. But I don't know, Brad. Before we answer me or before we answer you, why don't you take a stab at it? Do you think Dave Kellett now? Do you think I would have been an okay syndicated cartoonist in the 90s?
I think that having seen your college strip, I think the quality of your work would have put you on the radar of a syndicate, and there would have been a possibility that they would have said, "Oh, you know what you should do, Dave? You should go be an apprentice to this other syndicated cartoonist," which was still a practice that it was fairly healthy going into the '90s. Maybe not into the late '90s with the internet, but still would have been fairly healthy. In other words, I think your quality would have risen to the level of uh, you should consider an apprenticeship. And once you got that apprenticeship, I think you would have been a natural. I think
Yeah.
once somebody could have gotten a hold of you and said, "Oh, you know what? I see what you're doing there with that joke. Let's talk about the proper way to construct a joke. Let's talk about pacing. Let's talk about composition. Let's talk about your so-so art." And then I'm teasing. I'm teasing. But you know what I mean. You could have, with some guidance, you could have absolutely your sensibilities, your style, everything about what you do is perfect for a newspaper syndication setup.
Well, let me counterpoint that. I'm going to counterpoint that by saying uh, that I think Sheldon, Brad, are you familiar with the phrase "a hat on a hat"?
No.
Okay, so it's a joke writing phrase or a concept writing phrase that basically means you've made your idea so clever that there's actually a second idea on top of it that confuses the first idea,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like you're wearing a hat on top of a hat. Like, why would you do that? And so I think Sheldon, even though I've done it for 20 years now, and I've made a go of it with the so-so art. No, but even though I've been doing it for 20 years, Sheldon as a concept, now as an older writer, I can look back at this and go, oh, I see why it has trouble clicking with a lot of people. And the reason is, as a concept, it's a hat on top of a hat on top of a hat. And I'll tell you what
Yeah.
I mean.
Go
When
ahead.
I started with it was one of the core concepts was Sheldon was a kid billionaire because he created a software that sold like hotcakes, right?
Right.
So that's a version of the Richie Rich concept, right? No, super billionaire kid. Then I made it where his parents are dead, so he's being raised by his grandfather. Okay, well that's another weird concept to roll in there. And
Yeah,
then
but it's like Annie and Dondi and all of these other
sure,
orphan
but yeah,
strips.
that's another different version of you could have made that work. But then
Yeah.
I also had it where it's like, oh, Sheldon downloaded some speech recognition software into a duck's head. So now you got this talking duck that's walking around. Oh, I mean, I guess that makes sense. You could make that work. But then also the other animals don't talk for reasons that are kind of vaguely unexplained in the comic, but it's kind of Goofy versus the horse versus the dog in Mickey
Goofy
Mouse's
versus
world.
Pluto.
Yeah, Goofy versus Pluto. It's
Yeah.
like, why does the dog talk and the horse does? I don't know, or dog, vice versa. Anyway, what I'm getting at is conceptually, I made it too tricky for a newspaper comic strip because a newspaper comic strip, you need the concept to be bang, zoom, and you're off to the races,
Yeah.
Like, here's an easy, like, frankly, Bloom County was a hat on a hat on a hat. There was too many
Oh,
weird
yeah.
concepts going on with Bloom County.
Yeah.
But he made it work because the writing was so strong. And I think, anyway, what I'm saying is, as an older writer now looking back, I made Sheldon too damn complicated. There was too many hats on top of hats going on there where the average editor was like, people aren't going to be able to pick this up. What the kid's rich, but also the duck talks, but also the parents are dead, but also there was a lot of but alsos,
Too many but alsos.
Yeah.
You mean so are you mean like for an example of a comic strip with a hat on a hat? Would you mean like, let me just think of a few that I've read. One about a comic strip about a comic strip starring a gargoyle? Would that be a good example of a hat on a hat? Would that be a good
Yeah.
Would that be a good example of somebody who's trying so hard to be clever he forgot to be funny?
Yeah, or too
Yeah.
clever by half is another way to say it. Like
Yeah.
you just made it too you complicated your soup with too many flavors.
Yep.
I'm
Oh,
trying to see
yeah.
how many
Like,
visual metaphors I can throw in here.
no, I'll
Um,
give you one from I've been listening to Pandora, and every 5 seconds I hear orange, vanilla, Coke, a new flavor, orange. And it's like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Coke is a flavor. Orange is a flavor. Vanilla is a flavor. How many freaking flavors do I need? This stuff
yeah,
has to taste
exactly.
horrible. So what we were doing back in the 90s was we were trying to produce orange, vanilla, Coke.
Let me give you the counterpoint to Brad and I early attempts at writing a comic strip, to one that worked, that did not have a hat on a hat and is now worth roughly $12 billion. There's a cat, Brad. He's really fat. He likes to lie around the house. Oh boy, does he hate Mondays. And you know what? He loves lasagna. Bada bing, bada boom, you're out. Like that's it. He is disdainful of his owner, doesn't like the other dog in the house. Holy shit, there's the whole concept, Brad. Worth $12 billion. Okay, now
Actu-
mine is it's a billionaire kid that sold a lot of software, but also his parents are dead, but also his duck can talk, but also
Yeah.
the other pets don't talk. And people are like, what's going on in this comic strip?
I don't get it. Yeah, no, it's exactly right. And actually, you don't even have to go lasagna Mondays, blah blah blah. Garfield was about a fat cat. All that other stuff grew out of that, but you didn't need to know about the Mondays to understand it.
Yep,
Whereas
nope.
for Sheldon, you needed to know about the orphaned parents. You didn't need to know about lasagna. That grew out of him being a fat cat. Whereas you needed to know that the duck had software, Arthur had software downloaded. You needed to know that. You didn't. You don't need to know anything about Garfield as much as we love to disdain it, right? People throw stones at that one all the time. But there's one small problem. It's freaking brilliant because all you need to know is what's presented to you visually, and that is, hey, here's a fat cat. The freaking end. Enjoy the strip.
Yeah. Also, and I just always go back to this. If you don't like Garfield, if you don't like Mickey Mouse, if you don't like any one of these properties, just remember that you might not like it, but $12 billion have gone towards people liking it. So it's
Yeah.
doing okay by its concept, is what I'm getting at. Now,
Right.
listen, is money an indicator of quality of art? Not necessarily. I'm just saying that clearly my concept as a writer was too complicated by half. And
Yeah.
so I've learned as I've gotten older that if I were to travel back in time, you know what I would do, Brad?
What
Actually,
would you
going
do?
back in time now, I would change Sheldon to be a very different strip. I would probably keep the three core characters of grandfather, grandson, duck, but you'd launch without any of the billions. He's just a normal kid that's a nerd that figured out the one key concept is he figured out how to download software or voice recognition into his duck. Bang, you're off to the races. That's an
Yep.
easy, clean read and could have been launched much easier. So anyway, as an adult, or at least an older writer, I'm better now at seeing why Sheldon didn't click in the late '90s and why it struggled, frankly, for the first decade.
Yeah.
And if you've noticed, I've kind of quietly written out the billionaire stuff on Sheldon. I don't talk about that anymore. It's in the
Right.
background there, but I haven't talked about it maybe in 6 years in the strip. So that's also a thing is you can course correct slowly the mistakes you've made as a writer. And this goes to our writing out of a box thing, is that
Mhm.
I basically wrote myself into a terrible concept box that I took a couple years and wrote myself out of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, would I have done it all right at the 90s? Maybe. The flip side is, does it matter? No, because I'm so happy with the route that I've ended up with. I tell you what, everybody that I was jealous of that had a syndicated contract in the late 90s, I ain't jealous of them now, Brad. I'm telling you. And that's the
You
honest
ain't
to
a
God
kidding.
truth.
You ain't a kidding. Yeah,
I ain't.
you wouldn't switch places with them for nothing.
No, not at all. And in
Yeah.
fact, it's so interesting to me that they're all trying to jump ship into YA publishing now because
Yeah.
that's where the money is for their career path. Because syndication is drying up and dying on the vine. So they're all trying to get those, Diary of a Wimpy Kid style books out as fast as they can.
Yeah. Can't blame them.
Yeah, no, and I don't blame him either. Listen, there's money to be made in that section of publishing. So, anyway, Chris, I think this is a fun question. So now let's turn it to Brad. Brad, how would you have done if you could transport Brad Geiger with his back made out of whispered dreams? If you could transport him back to the late '90s, how would he do in terms of submitting to a syndicate?
I would have failed. I would be in another line of work right now, and I'll tell you why. Because the answer is why I will probably always be a staunch supporter of webcomics, and why I will always
Okay.
be a fierce independent. The answer to this question explains everything you need to know about how I feel about comics and independent publishing. I would not have. I would not. My art, when I look back at it, at the stuff that I was doing at the beginning of Greystone Inn, my art was not strong enough, and my writing was definitely not strong enough. Although I could see, glimmers of interesting things to come. My writing was nowhere near strong enough, and my art really wasn't. And my work did not rise to the level that Dave's did, where an editor would see that and say, "Oh, we got to get this kid into an apprenticeship." They would have they would have looked at my stuff and they would have said, "We need to get this kid into another line of work so he can eat." And I don't say that self-deprecatingly. That's really the honest to goodness truth. My work wasn't there. They were well within their rights to send me rejections. And I wouldn't have been on anybody's radar. And that's where my story would have ended if I had transported myself back 10 years earlier and tried to make it. The reason that I will always love webcomics, the reason that I'll always be a staunch independent, the reason that I come down on some of these issues as strongly as I do and always will, is because being able to publish on the web gave me a place that I could work and improve and work all these issues out, and at the same time keep getting feedback to keep me going. In other words, those first couple of years of Greystone Inn weren't very good, but I got a few people who got some enjoyment out of it that turned into readers that stuck around and
Right.
would write little notes on my blog and make comments and stuff. And that was just the fact that I could see that people had been there, that there was a heartbeat in my page views when I looked at my web traffic, that I got a heartbeat, was enough for me. And that kept me going from year after year until I started to improve in little immeasurable bites and started to get better and better. And then that heartbeat got stronger and stronger. Those readers got more and more vocal.
Right.
And without the ability to publish in that way and slowly improve at my own rate, I would have never, ever gotten to the point where I could call this my full-time career. It
Yeah.
just wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have been
Right.
on anyone's radar, and it would have just ended there. And the fact that I was able to do this slowly and continually getting better and better, and those little bits of encouragement I got along the way for over the last 19 years, was what I needed to get to a place where now when I put stylus to tablet and I want to do a scene, I end up with a product that I'm so much happier. I'm very proud of what I'm able to do visually, and my writing, I think, is as strong as it's ever been, way stronger than it was back then. I have a lot better idea, how to pace a joke, how to write a joke, what a joke is,
Mm-hmm.
and I would have never had that without the web. So I'm always going to be a web comics guy. No matter what happens down the road, I'm always going to be in love with that concept because it was a life changer for me. But that would not have happened under syndication.
I will agree with you that for both of us, it was a saving grace that we were able to develop slowly, consistently, and with feedback, both monetarily and emotionally, from an online audience
Hmm.
that made us better cartoonists over the last 20 years. But I, in friendship, will actually disagree with you that I think knowing if I could take your brain right now and transport you back to 1998 in your hand and your brain right now,
Hmm.
I think you could absolutely make a go of it, and because you are innovative, you would know you would know a couple things. You would know there's no money on the web for at least 10 to 12 years. Like it's 1998 and you're like, well, all right, I got to do something. So I know you would put your nose to the grindstone or shoulder to the grindstone. What do you put to the grindstone? Brad, what are you currently putting to the grindstone?
I can't reach the grindstone. Are you kidding me? I'd be happy to get close to the grindstone right now.
I'm just happy to look at the grindstone. No,
I'll
but
put
Brad,
my thoughts and prayers to the grindstone.
sending thoughts and prayers. Anyway, what I'm getting at is I know that you would, knowing that you wouldn't be able to make any money on the web for 10 years, but you're like, damn it, I know I want to be in comics. So here's what you would do. You would take all of the skills that you've applied to comics like Cape Carnival and things like that, which are masterfully done, I think. And your writing, which is top notch, it's the best it's ever been. And your art style, which has gotten very clean and frankly striking, and your ability to mimic different styles, I know that within a year of being transported back in time, you could have a syndicated strip just by sheer willpower and the skill you would bring to it. I disagree with you, and I say that you would be able to do it.
Well, that's a very kind thought, and it puts a warm spot in my heart that almost makes me forget about my back. But I would only hope that you'd be the one thing that I do that resonates is that I call it willpower or call it just being really stubborn. But I probably would not have given up. And that might have been a player in the whole thing.
Yeah, you don't give up.
I think it would have been a much more uphill battle than it was.
Well, what's that Thomas Edison quote? I think it's Edison. Success is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration.
Yeah.
I know you would just work the problem for a solid year and be like, no, I am getting syndicated and I'm going to do 4 different concepts and we're going to bang, bang, bang these out. And we're going to get them. Like you would know also how to better launch a concept than you did in the late 90s. That's a key part. Yeah. The concept is very key.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so I think that puts that's a fun question though. Thank you for that one, Chris. But I'm going to move us on to our last question for the show, Bradley.
Okay.
So this comes in from Josh Hanno, and it says, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Josh.
Yeah.
It says, Brad and Dave, how do you handle members of your community that break the rules as a result of being special needs? For example, we have an adult on our Discord server that has difficulty understanding when their behavior turns into harassment, typically triggered by their inability to comprehend hyperbole or social cues. We always stop harassment as it occurs, but how do you prevent future strife from someone who may not be able to learn from their mistakes? Or do you enforce the standard community guidelines apply to everyone, such as a 3-strike system? Wow, that's a really tricky question. Brad Guigar, do you want to jump on that one first? That's a tricky one.
This I could easily get into trouble depending on where my pain meds are at this point in my bloodstream, but I'm gonna shoot from the hip. First thing you got to do is avoid what was my initial reaction. I'm gonna lay my soul bare for you, and in hopes of maybe putting this conversation further. First thing I thought when I heard this was, this freaking guy knows when he's being an asshole and when he's not. Don't tell me that he's got needs and all this. If he's being a jerk, you gotta handle him. That was my first reaction. And then when I thought about it, using my brain, it's like, no, you know what, Brad? You know this for a fact. There are a whole lot of people coming from a whole lot of different backgrounds, and it is possible to be somebody who doesn't always realize when they're being inappropriate, or
absolutely,
it is not as easy as just saying, well, this guy's being dumb. He's being a jerk. The fact of the matter is that handling these kind of social cues and especially in a computer situation where you don't even have a face to cue off of, it can be very difficult. And so, first of all, even though he might, let's say, maybe he is a jerk. Let's just say maybe, but you've got to take this person at face value and say, no, you know what? Let's give this person the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there's a serious situation there. Now you've taken out your initial, this person's just a jerk, and now you're dealing with it. Okay, you're dealing with somebody with absolute special needs. Great. Now what do you do? Well, There's no easy answer to that because you can't let this person disrupt the community you're trying to build. You can't let that happen because you're trying to build a community here. And if this community stops meeting together on your Discord server because it keeps being a negative experience, then that's going to have a negative impact on what you're trying to build. So you can't let it go on. Is the simple truth there? Your unfortunate task now is to pull this person aside and, with as much understanding as you can, explain. You may not realize this, but there's when this specific thing happened, when this interchange happened, that you can point to. In other words, let's not leave it up to generalizations. Point out specifics. When this thing happened, a lot of people did not enjoy that discourse, and since it's happening in my house, as it were, I've got to do something about it, and you've got to be a little bit more sensitive in the future, or else you either have to put this person on a timeout until they are able to be worked back into the community, or if it happens significantly enough, if it happens frequently enough, you've got to remove the person from your community because you cannot let your community suffer. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. You can't let this person break up and disrupt your community. You can't let that be your first step. You've got to take those, do everything you possibly can before it gets to that. But if you've tried everything and you've really done your best to extend a hand in friendship and guide this person through, then you've got to block them.
Yeah, this is I think in general, you were probably right. That and the steps you laid out too. I would also pull parties aside privately on the Discord server, either through DMs or through. And part of this is everything is made so much infinitely worse because it's online. It's
Yeah.
communicated digitally, not in person. Like if I could pull both parties aside, you can say so much with a look, with a gesture, with a tonality that in physically that you just can't do digitally without a 9 paragraphs of awkward phrasing, you know?
Yeah.
And so that we should all just acknowledge that is a shame. That's the world we live in, but that is a shame. Second of all, to Brad's other point, I think pulling them aside is important because you don't want to publicly, at least as the first step. I think the best thing to say is, "Hey, you may not have realized it, but," that
Yes.
kind of a tone.
Yeah.
Because like many of you, I have special needs folks in my family, and uh, all the intentions are good. All the intentions are probably joking around, or frankly, mimicking what is seen on TV or film, but not realizing that it can't be used in this context, or that it was inappropriate even in the TV or film because the character was being a jerk,
Right.
intentionally so. And so sometimes when moods or tones are being mimicked, it's like, oh no 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 no, don't say that phrase. That nope 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 nope. That was in a movie that was a bad character in that movie, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So first of all, it's just this is heartbreaking because on a lot of levels, you know, in life we are all of us trying to make the world a better place, separate from money, separate from our cartooning.
Yeah.
We all walk through this life trying to make the people around us that we meet or that we interact with better. And so this is heartbreaking because in perfect conditions, you would be able to soothe the situation over and make this one particular poster learn a nice lesson and also become a better and happier person, right?
Right.
But sometimes it gets really tricky and awkward, and there's 1,000 different counterbalancing things to work on, because also the rights and privileges and opinions of the people that are being insulted on this board are also incredibly valid, and so
Yes.
you have to balance that out too, because they are also thinking, feeling autonomous adults that have all the rights to not be abused publicly. So I think both Brad and I would admit that this is just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking
Yeah.
on a lot of levels. But I think the best you can do is approach it with an open heart, where you try to smooth things over at first by pulling people aside, and then, to Brad's point, slowly escalating what the punishments are if it keeps happening.
Yep.
Because some things can't be fixed, and some things can't be fixed over a digital email. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
if it's going to be fixed, it's going to be fixed by the people in their life. In the same way that if Brad and I were having a fight, the worst way to fix that fight is by emails and text messages back to each other. Like
Oh,
we should
yeah.
hash it out in person. And so you get where I'm going with this, is that it's really hard to solve this situation if you're not in their life. You don't know the full conditions of their day to day. All that sort of stuff has an impact in what they say online. So um, I don't know. It's just hard. It's heartbreaking, Brad. You keep going for a second, Brad. What else? What other thoughts you got for
No,
this one?
my only point is that don't rush to judgment. It's so easy because let's face it, for some of us, this whole idea of it's hard to read social cues and stuff like that is so foreign, right? I admit that it's a foreign concept to me. It's like, come on, you know when you're being a jerk. Don't be like my first blush before I took some time to think it through, right?
Right,
Don't
right.
be like that. Take a little bit of time and think and give your fellow human the benefit of the doubt. Even if it's going to turn out maybe you're wrong. Maybe this guy is a jerk. But the important thing is that you gave a fellow human being the benefit of the doubt. And you can never go wrong doing that.
Boy, is that true. Like even the Comic-Con experience that I had, Brad, like
Yeah.
I could have
We made a
chosen to be
lot of fun of
immediately.
that.
Yeah, I could have chosen to be immediately offended by that and like call the guy
Right.
out right to his face, like, "How dare you? I work hard on my art." But also, first of all, read the broader spectrum of things. He was clearly trying to give a
Yep.
compliment,
Yep.
and also have a greater sense of confidence in my own ego that like I don't need this guy to say that I'm a great artist. Just let it be. Who
Well,
cares? That.
that's my point. How did we act? We made fun. We were like, this is a funny situation.
Right.
Not can you believe the unmitigated gall of this person to come up and speak to the Dave Kellett the way he did? No, it's like this is silly. And you know why? Because if we go back far enough, and usually this happens to be about 2 o'clock in the morning when I wake up and find that I can't go back to sleep, and my brain goes, oh. Remember that time in high school that you said that one thing to that
Oh,
one person?
Brad, yes.
And you go,
Yes.
oh, why did I say that? Oh, that was such a dumb thing to say. I want to call this person right now and tell them that I was a jackass. That was a horrible thing. We've all been there.
Right.
No matter how great we think we are. Oh, well, I don't have any special needs. I got news for you. We're all a little special needs at different points in our time. We all need some special handling and a little special dispensation. And think about all the times that you needed a special treatment from somebody and they gave it to you, right? How many
Right.
times have I said something that was just like ridiculous? And instead of saying, oh, you know what? I've just determined, Brad, that you're a jerk. The person says, well, you know what? There might have been a better way to say that. Or just, any number of ways. Instead of bringing down the hammer of justice and determining once and for all that this person's a jerk, how many times have people kind of given me a little leeway, cut me a little slack? I've been the
Right.
beneficiary.
Right.
Are you kidding me with this mouth? I've been the beneficiary of that a lot in my life. If I can't bring myself to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, then I'm a real jerk.
Right. So I think approaching this, and it sounds like the very fact that you're asking this question tells Brad and I that you are at least sensitive and kind about the really awkward wrinkle that you're facing here
Yeah.
between different humans. So that's good news because you could just be like, "Fuck everybody, you're all banned, bye," like that kind of thing, and that benefits no one. So I think the best. God, this is hard though. The best situation is probably to pull them aside quietly through DMs or texts and just say,
Yep.
"Hey, listen, always, in your words on this board, please always default to kindness. Don't
Yes.
if you're thinking that you're trying to be funny, maybe just compliment other people for a month and see how that goes. And so, you'll find the right wording. That was not it, but oh boy, it's hard. I just want you to know from Brad and I, we recognize that this is hard. This is a hard road to walk.
Yeah.
But also recognize, and I'm sure you do, that however hard this moment is for you, my God, there are people that walk infinitely harder roads, and it sounds like this person might be one of them. And you are right to sympathize and empathize with them, and to try to navigate their way through it. And that is a kindness on your part. So kudos to you for that.
Yep. I agree 100%.
Oh, but boy, that does make my heart heavy, though. Oh, boy.
Yeah, well, listen, we've burned through another hour talking comics, and that means it's time for me to say that you've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And one of the kindest people I know, Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions at www.woodsong.media.
Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/comiclab, so we're going to make a go of it and say it twice. Patreon.com/comiclab.
All right, well, the podcast is over. Time for me to cartoon. Oh, God, this pencil is so heavy. It's so heavy. Oh, God.
Oh, no. Why did I have to go with the 7mm instead of the 5?
Oh, every inch of my nerves are screaming in my back. This pencil, no.